Welcome to the Mystical Movement Show, where we explore the intersection of creativity and wellness. I'm Natalie, and about 18 months ago, I got my personal trainer certification. And I learned so much throughout the process, and my first guinea pig was myself. I have taken what I learned from my certification and applied it to my own life before applying it to any of my clients' lives. And one of the biggest things that I changed when I got this certification was to look at how I'm using specific muscles. Let me give you a before picture. It was kind of like I would work out and do some weights here and there, do some upper body, do some lower body, do some cardio, and mostly I was just dancing or doing yoga. That was like most of the fitness that I really like to do. But when I got my personal trainer certification, one thing I realized, and this is generally applicable, it's not just I'm trying to give like one of the tips that's the most universal of all because it's really even about how you think about your body, and it has affected my creativity, which we will get into as well. So, when I say looking at specific muscles, what I mean is there are muscles in your body that can be really tight, and then there are muscles that can be really loose. So muscles that are like overly conditioned, overly strengthened, overly tight, and then muscles that are not strengthened enough. And what they teach us to do is do the overhead squat assessment, which is this assessment that you can see which muscles are being used too much and which ones are not being used enough based on whenever you do this squat, like if the knees go in or if there's a bend, how far the body tilts, if you go forward or back, if the knees go in or out. There are these different things that will show you which muscles need to be strengthened and which ones need to be stretched. And that's not how I was approaching it before. Beforehand, it was like, well, I'll just work out my legs, work out my upper body, do some cardio, do some yoga, go to a dance class. I'm getting my fitness in, I'm getting my movement in. But and that's not bad. For a lot of people, if you're not moving already, just getting moving is going to be a really great start. But especially whenever you want to grow and develop and maybe improve posture, because that was something that I really wanted to work on, was I was experiencing pain in different parts of my body. And as a dancer, I'm always looking for longevity. Like I want to be able to drop it low until for as long as I live. And so that's what I'm looking for. And I realized there were certain muscles that were inhibiting that by being overly tight, and then ones that were inhibiting that by being not tight enough. And so I got really specific on which muscles I was going to strengthen, which ones I was going to work out, and then which ones I was going to stretch. And whenever it comes to stretching, the stretch isn't just 5 seconds in that stretch. It's spending at least 30 seconds in the stretch, because 30 seconds is as long as it takes for the brain to signal that it's okay for that muscle to start releasing. Because think about it, say you're just in a position for like 5 seconds, and your body's not just going to want to necessarily let go of that. Like say the muscles in your neck, right? If they're tight, that's probably for a good reason. They're protecting. If something happened to your neck, that's it. Gonzo, donezo. If that snaps, right? So these muscles are really trying to protect you. And so these the habits and conditioning that we have in our body is often there for a good reason, but just maybe not as adaptive. It's maybe a little more maladaptive than we would like. That's even one thing that I changed in my morning yoga flow, was to not just go through a sun salutation and hold each pose for 5 seconds. I would start to hold certain stretches for the muscles that I knew I wanted to lengthen and stretch, my overactive muscles. I would sit in those poses or in those stretches for at least 30 seconds, very intentionally working on helping them relax and release and loosen. And then, like I said, whenever it came time to lift weights or even just body weight workouts, which ones I was strengthening was again very specific. I picture it almost like I used to just take one, like a watercolor of paint and just like watercolor. If like blue watercolor is strength and then red watercolor is stretch, I would just like do blue over everything. And then whenever it came time to stretch, it was just like red over everything. And now it's a very different picture of the which is blue and which one's red. And it's very specific. And so this can apply to yourself. This applies to anyone. This isn't going to just be, again, now which ones you strengthen and which ones you loosen, that's very specific to you. And that's where I'm not just going to get into my routine specifically, because that's what worked for me and where I was overactive and which ones were underactive. That's applicable to me. You have your own muscles, but in the most general terms, all of us are going to have overactive muscles and underactive ones. So working, say, with a personal trainer can help you identify which those are so that you can be working more effectively. That's really what the specificity has brought me, is this effectiveness. And also how I realized, or another thing that I changed through this realization, was I was like, oh, okay, if this is applicable to every muscle in our body, then it's applicable to the muscles in our face too. And before that, I had never worked out my face or even thought of that as a concept. But if you look at a photo of me 2 years ago versus a photo of me now, I look drastically different. And that's because I started working out my face. There are muscles that I started to relax, especially with gua sha, to the overactive muscles, really in my jaw, that's where I would really gua sha to move, to help release and help stretch and helps loosen those muscles. And then other muscles, like in my cheekbones, I would flex and I would strengthen because those ones were underactive while other muscles were overactive. And so that even applies to my face, which was another thing that I never saw happening or I never thought of happening before I realized this. I had never thought of working out my face before, but I was like, okay, well, if it's working with my glutes and my hamstrings, that certain ones um can be strengthened and certain ones can be stretched, then that can happen with the muscles in my face too. The muscles are all muscles throughout the body. And so that is really one of the biggest things. And now how it has affected my creativity is, not only do I feel, especially because me and my creativity is so connected to dance, obviously I'm noticing big gains in my dancing ability, in certain, like from endurance to being able to have more strength and more power in different movements. But also I think of that specificity, it's a very creative act to create. Like, I'm in a way creating my face. In a way, I'm creating my body by taking the time to be specific about how it is that I want to be strengthening and stretching. And this also goes even more broadly. Then we can apply this more broadly to the creative process, where if you think about it, there are certain things that you might feel really comfortable with in your creative process. Maybe things that you're overactive in your creative process. And if you look at my alchemical creative process, you can go back to one of the episodes where I share it. It's pre-production, production, post-production, distribution. And so maybe you're really comfortable in the pre-production and production stages. Maybe you've strengthened those a lot. You love to come up with ideas. You love to make the things. But then whenever it comes to editing and sharing those things, those muscles, quote, are underactive while the other ones are overactive. So you can think of your whole creative process in this way and get really specific on which parts of my creative process am I over strengthened on, am I overactive on, and which parts of my creative process am I underactive on, and what can I be doing to strengthen the underactive muscles of my creative process, and what can I be doing to stretch and release and relax the overactive parts of my creative process. So this is the biggest takeaway that I have had from my personal trainer certification. I actually just got my nutrition coach certification too, and so much goodness that I learned in that I'm excited to share. But Like I said, I'm making myself my first guinea pig, and I'm going to be applying this stuff and seeing what really becomes applicable generally as well as specifically applicable. So there'll be a part two to this kind of, which is what the biggest things that I've changed since getting my nutrition coach certification. But this is just the personal trainer part of it. And another thing that I did was create my program routine, which I had a beta of last year. And it was amazing to start to apply this to other people, see it change their lives, along with just all of the other alchemical goodness that I have created and the dance experience that I have. So that program routine, it's more than just like the dance routine pun, as well as, so you're not just learning dance routines, you're really learning the routine of who you are as a creative, the foundation for your creative genius. And a good routine, this came up in both the personal trainer certification and the nutrition coach certification. A good personal training or a good nutrition program has to be flexible. It has to adapt and grow with you because you're going to be growing and adapting as you use the routine. And so it's not even just about getting you set up with a specific thing that you have to do. It's about getting you set up to even make routines. How do you form routines in your life? And what are the things that you want to come back to? What are those first principles of a routine that allow you to always feel like you're mentally, physically, emotionally well, no matter what is changing as far as the aspects of your life are, because that's what's going to cause a routine to change up so often, is these different things in your life happening, and the routine needs to be able to adjust to that while still making sure all of those bases for your mental, physical, emotional, financial well-being are all still in place. And so that's what we really get into in routine. And routine itself is an 8-week program, but that first assessment, the foundation assessment, that's the first session that we do. I've actually made that one available so you can just buy a foundation assessment and then you can sign up for routine through that. The money from the foundation assessment goes towards the full program if you do that, if you want to sign up, or you can just have that one session. I made that decision after launching the beta, realizing that it would be really helpful for people because that's where in the foundation assessment is where we lay out a lot of that stuff. I'll do that overhead squat assessment with you. And I also have a huge questionnaire. We're going to line you up with my alchemical creative process and see where your elemental strengths are, where the weaknesses are, where those overactive muscles are, where those underactive muscles are, and give you that game plan for going forward really holistically in a way that works for you now and isn't about necessarily trying to one day achieve something so that you're happy, but something that really meets you where you are for that process of becoming, so that you can open the gate to the present now and love and enjoy your life and your movement and your nutrition and all of these things now, and meets you where you are now, but gives you a foundation to grow really firmly for who it is that you are becoming. So that'll be available in the link for that will be available in the description. And if that is interesting to you, I would love, love, love to meet with you and discuss that. So, or go through that assessment with you. Feel free to hop on that. And I love you, and I'll see you in the next episode.